difference, one cup at a time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, welcome to Tea Time. That's right, Miss Liz is back. And you know what time that is? It is time to do storytelling and words. That's right, we don't serve a beverage on Tea Time. We serve real life stories and words with the TEA, Teaching Educational Awareness. But today I have the incredible Jeff Rasley back. He's going to be back for the third time. That's right, he loves Tea Time so much that he's come back for the third time. And we were just talking in the background, and we always seem to find each other when a time needs to be picking up, because sometimes you just need that pickup, right? So before we get started, we're going to get you guys over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel. We're going to get you to ring that little doorbell so that you can listen to all these tea times in the morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you feel like it. Or you can join us during the live streams and ask your questions and share your support. What does Miss Liz offer you? Well, I offer you over 300 plus tea times with different guests from around the globe with over 105 different topics. So there's something there for everybody. If one tea doesn't resonate with you, the next one will. I guarantee you that. So now a little bit on how Tea Time works. Well, we do a disclaimer. And the reason we do a disclaimer on Tea Time is because you just never know. Sometimes things happen in life and we need those backups and support to watch over us. And then I'm going to give you a bio on Jeff. And then I'm going to get Jeff in here. And we're going to be serving you a tea of tasteful, energetic, and alive. And I think today is a perfect time to talk about those three words, deeply important. So grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab your juice, grab whatever you like. You do not have to drink tea to listen to Tea Time with Miss Liz. So let's get started with the disclaimer. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz, myself, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, it may bring forth dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment and taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It's significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you this time, I respect your wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all regular Tea Time shows are done on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you see it on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's a special, surprise, or a rescheduled Tea Time. Miss Liz has tea all the time for you guys. So now a little bit about my guest. Well, Jeff Rasley is residing on the White River in Indianapolis. I think I'm saying it right. With Alice and Poppy, is an accomplished writer with over 80 featured articles and 14 books. His adventurous spirit took him from hitchhiking across the USA to leading the Himalayan treks. A committed social activist, he co-founded the Goshen Walk for Hunger, fought for renters' rights, and led efforts for environmental cleanup. Jeff founded the Basa Village Foundation, promoting development in Nepal, and is active in various nonprofits. He holds a BA from the University of Chicago and a JD from Indiana University, and on MDiv from Christian Theological Seminary. For Jeff, reading prose is an adventurous and his Himalayan climbs. Let's get Jeff in here and let's spill some tea together. And I'm going to take a sip of my tea because I am drinking tea today. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Liz. Good to be with you again.
You know, the opening of Tea Time always has me rambling. I feel like I'm rambling because I have to put so much out there, right? So welcome back, Jeff.
Thanks. Good to see you again.
So Jeff, for people who haven't seen you on Tea Time on season 3 and 4, share a little bit about who you are and what you offer to everybody out there.
Well, thanks. Well, I mean, you covered a lot of it. I grew up in a small town in northern Indiana called Goshen, and when I turned 18, and after being strong-armed into trying out college for at least a semester, because my parents said they would shoot me if I didn't at least give it a try, I dropped out, worked in a factory for 6 weeks, saved up a little bit of money, and hitchhiked across the country from northern Indiana all the way down to the southernmost point in the US, Key West, then hitchhiked over to New Orleans to experience Mardi Gras and back home. And that was just the first of many travel adventures, which have uh, I've been to. Stopped counting after I hit 45 countries and 49 states in the US and almost all the provinces in Canada.
Oh,
Um, so, yeah, travel has been a big part of my life, and was kind of the heart of that last book that I wrote. But it is what we call autofiction, meaning it's based on a true, real experience, but it's also fictionalized. So, um, yeah, and I am still happily married to Alicia after many, many years, and both of our sons are grown, and we have our cat Poppy, who lives with us here on the White River in Indianapolis.
I couldn't remember if Poppy was a cat or a dog, and I'm glad that you had said
Yep, she's the kind of little creature that has those sharp claws, which the last dog we had at least did not have sharp claws, which that there is an advantage for dog owners in that.
So I'm gonna take my listeners on a little travel because you've traveled so much. So we're gonna travel together today. When you first came to me for tea time, you had been told by your wife at the time, I think, to take a hike, but you had really taken a hike when you came. You had climbed the mountains in Nepal and that. Do you want to share a little bit about that, Jeff?
Yeah, well, that was quite a while ago now. But when I turned 40, I was manifesting midlife crisis symptoms, and it was kind of ridiculous, but I guess this is what goes with that syndrome because life was great. I was the senior partner in a boutique law firm that was doing very well and was a very involved dad. And, it's like you looked at the surface and life couldn't have been better, but there was just this kind of gnawing discomfort and dissatisfaction. And my wife um, was unfortunately, sort of, victim is a little too strong, but, saw it. And so one day I came home from the office and she slapped a brochure down on the coffee table in front of me and said, "Why don't you go do this?" And it was to join a trekking group in Nepal and trek to Mount Everest. So I did, uh, and I fell in love with the Himalayan mountains and with the people that live up in the high country there, and ended up going back 13 more times, eventually becoming a trekking and mountaineering leader. I went through, training to learn how to climb properly and organized many groups. Started a foundation called the Basa Village Foundation, which you mentioned, and we do what we call culturally sensitive development group in this remote area of Nepal called Basa. And it just, became a very big part of my life. And it still is. I'm still the president of the foundation. But unfortunately, age and a hip replacement have caught up with me. So my really hard trekking and climbing days are probably behind me. So I haven't been back to Nepal for several years, but we have somebody from our foundation go each year, and so we keep in personal contact. And now with Zoom and the internet, which has reached even almost all the remote areas of Nepal, we stay in touch with our local contacts as well. So long answer to your to your question.
No, that's okay. And then when you were on last year for season 2, you had come on for 72 Wisdoms, your book,
Oh
72
yeah. Uh-huh.
Wisdoms. So how's
Right.
how's that book going for you?
Well, I mean, no book that I've written has ever sold as many copies as I wish that they would. But yeah, I mean, a couple of thousand people bought the book, and it was intended to offer not just the wisdom that I have gained through my life, but the wisdom that 72 other interesting people have offered. So each chapter, and there's 72 chapters, relatively short chapters, but each chapter starts with a wisdom saying from some person who I think had something to offer, and then I critique the underlying wisdom, provide the history about that person and why it was said, what the context was, which then leads to the next one. So it's kind of a stepping stone book. Um, and, so it brings in a lot of different perspectives on a lot of different topics, but what I consider kind of a holistic approach to how to live a good life in a wise way.
Well, and it is stepping stones, right? Because the next book that you reached out to me for is Hitchhiker's Big Adventure. And that's what your life has been, Jeff. It's been a big adventure since in the 3 years that I've known you. It's been an adventure just getting to know you as well.
Well, thanks. I decided at a fairly young age that I wanted my life to, in a way, sort of reflect two things. One is to be adventurous, to live adventurous, and in that sense, I mean it like approaching life like it's a work of art. Not just go out and recklessly do crazy things and have a bucket list of all the, wild things that you could imagine doing that would be adrenaline highs. That isn't what I mean. I mean, building a life that's, that's a beautiful thing. And then, secondly, living responsibly. If you have the ability to give back to your community and to the world, and at an early age, that was ingrained in me. I mean, I grew up in a church, in a family, in a community that was very close knit and where people looked out for each other. And, even though I live in a big city now, and I lived in Chicago for a while, I lived in London for a while, where there's, that's, kind of hard to have a real sense of the community like you do in a small town. But there's, so many ways that people who have some gifts and means to give back. And so that's also been, a strong influence and intention in my life, also from a young age.
So, how did you get the title for the last book that you reached out to me for?
Hitchhiker's Big Adventure. Yeah.
Yeah, how'd you get that?
Well, um, I thought so like I said, when I was 18, I dropped out of college after one semester. I wanted to have a big adventure because life was like I'd been going to school all my life, and I played sports and I worked, and it's like every hour of every day it seemed like so much of it, I was doing things that other people told me I had to do, teachers, parents, ministers, bosses. And so I wanted to just go out on my own, be as free as I could be. Um, and I just, just struck me, well, I live in, pretty far north. And this was in um, February when I left. It was very cold. And I thought, I want to go someplace warm. Let's look at the map. Oh, Key West. That's the furthest place away going south. So that's going to be my destination. So I had saved up a whole $65. My mom drove me out to the edge of town and with tears in her eyes said goodbye. And I stuck my thumb out and started off on this big adventure. Now, but I have to say, like I said, the book is not a factual travel log of everything I experienced. Most of the characters in the book are based on characters I met. All the places in the book where the main character, which seems a lot like me, although I give him the name Jack, were places that I experienced. Um, and most of the experiences in the book were things that I experienced. But it was so long ago, I couldn't remember everything. I didn't keep a journal. I didn't take a camera. We didn't have cell phones back then because I just wanted to live it. So I
Yeah.
wasn't interested in recording it in any way, just live it. So, trying to remember it, I decided I can't do that. So I'm going to base a story and just tell a story based on that experience. So that's what the book is.
Were you ever scared when you were hitchhiking, Jeff?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I couple of times got into a car where a guy had his hand on a gun. He's kind of leaning over, and as I get in, I see he's got his hand kind of down, not exactly under the seat, but just in front of the seat. And then I see, well, it's because he's got a gun in his hand. And he proceeded to be a really interesting guy. Um, he was an alligator hunter in
Oh,
Florida, and he had a gun on the gun rack in his pickup truck, and he taught me all about alligator hunting as we drove across Alligator Alley at the very southern end of Florida. And I got sort of tricked into going to a Children of God cult, a commune, which was more like a prison than
oh,
the kind of commune that I thought it was going to be. Um, got tricked into it by these two pretty girls who approached me
those
and
pretty
said,
girls will get you every time.
Yep, and they say, "Want to come home with us?" That's a hard thing to say no to when you're 18, and
Yeah.
especially when they say our home is a commune. And I had to sneak out under cover of darkness to get away from it. So yeah, and there was a time when spent the night in a flop house in Atlanta, Georgia, and this very scary gay guy was threatening to break in
Oh,
and do things that I had no desire to do. So that I had to show him that I had a weapon because I took a buck knife with me. Um, and so there were a few events like that, but in reality, in terms of actual physical harm, I didn't suffer any. And I met people there is no way I would have ever met in Goshen, Indiana. So it really fulfilled the desire I had to have this great adventure, and it just turned me on to keep traveling and do it in a way where I would meet local people and have experiences much different than the ordinary ones in the life I was living at home.
Yeah, your book, the book cover, the hitchhiker, reminded me of my uncle. I had an uncle that hitchhiked every summer. He would hitchhike from Manitoba to Kapuskasing to go see my grandparents, and he would have the stories of incredible people that he met along the way. You know, and he was one of those tobacco chewing guys that would spit in a can. So when I seen the cover of your book, I was like, God, that reminds me so much of my Uncle Kenny. My cousins are listening. They'll be like, yeah, that was my dad. Every summer, that's what he would do, travel from Manitoba to Kapuskasing. And he always made it there and made it back home. But he always had good stories to tell along the way as well.
You nobody hitchhikes today like they did back in before I did in the 60s, but when I was hitchhiking in the 70s, we're all so paranoid and afraid of other people. But back then, when there was this kind of hippie peace, love consciousness,
Yeah.
um, I mean, it, I, there wasn't this sense of, oh my God, the stranger is someone you should be scared of. There was
Yeah.
much more a sense of, stranger, cool. Let's get to know each other.
Right. Let's
So,
have that adventure together. Like, have
yeah,
some conconversations. You got to learn about alligators.
that's right, which there aren't a lot of in Indiana.
So, what did it teach you about yourself as a hitchhiker?
Well, I think it gave me probably more self-confidence than I had before that. Just that I could survive it, that I could cope with getting in the car of a complete stranger whose life was very different from mine, um, and get to know that person and have that person get to know me, and just live through a very different experience. Something like, I had hitchhiked a little bit. um, I had hitchhiked a couple times from my house over to Lake Michigan, which is you know 100, miles away, something like that, and camped out, and hitchhiked once down to Indiana University to hang out with some friends of mine, but nothing like this. So yeah, I think self-confidence and just this sense that I know how to survive. I know how to adapt. I think one sort of definition of intelligence is adaptability. Being able to go into a situation and figure out how to not just survive it, but to engage with it successfully. And I did that. And motorcycling across North America the next year, hitchhiking across Europe, scuba diving throughout the Caribbean, solo sea kayaking in the Pacific, climbing and trekking in the Himalayas, all of that. Just, you know, it was, again, these were all just big adventures as opposed to frightening, scary experiences.
Well, I think it goes to your word because I asked you to give me one word to describe yourself, Jeff, and you gave me curious. And that's what I hear with all this adventure, right? Is you were curious, you wanted to go out and just try it. Uh, so, so when you hear the word curious, is that what you think of? Is all the adventures you've had in life?
Yeah, and also, I think that it's being curious is an attribute that is is a good thing beyond just doing big adventures. I think if to learn, you need to have a curious mind, to engage with other people, even people that you're around every day. If you're not curious about them, um, your relationships are going to get pretty stale. So, having curiosity about the world and about other people, I think is important. And I think it maybe just came natural to me I could probably give more credit to my parents than to myself for it, because they definitely encouraged me to, to learn and experience. And I think when I went off hitchhiking, my mother especially probably wished that she hadn't encouraged that so much, but too late.
Has there ever been any time when your mom has said, "Oh, I shouldn't have said go down that road"?
Oh, she has many times said that all of her gray hairs are due to me. That she even, I mean, now I do things that make her worry, so I don't tell her everything that's going on in my life. But yeah, she's a wonderful mother, but yeah, she's also a bit of a worrier.
So, Jeff, let's get into your tea. You gave me some incredible words to with your tea today: tasteful, energetic, and alive. So let's talk about those three words.
Okay. Okay, so, and I think if I was just asked for three words, I might not have chosen those, but since you stick me as you have three times now with ones that start with T, E, and A,
Right? Every time you
I
come,
have to
you give
come
me
up.
a different tea.
Yeah, I have to come up with something. So, tasteful. I mean, that's a good thing to be. I mean, to me, tasteful means that you have taken the time to try to develop a sense of what's good. Not just what tastes good in your mouth, but what is good in your life. Um, and energetic, I mean, you got to have energy to live fully, to live a good productive life. So that's, I think that's fairly self-evident. Then awareness, uh you need to be aware of your environment, and especially if you're doing things that are different, that you're not used to. And Liz, can you hear a kind of knocking in the background? Because there's a woodpecker
Nope.
okay, a woodpecker is pecking on the side of my house, right outside my window. It's like drumming along with us.
Oh,
There.
well, he
Okay,
wanted to
it's
get
stopped.
into the stream. I know I don't
Yeah.
hear it, but
Okay. It was kind of funny. Just after he last asked that last question, he just started pecking away. Like
well, he
he's
wanted
going
to
to
be
answer
aware,
for me.
right? He wanted us aware that he was here.
That's yes. Yeah.
Do you get a lot of woodpeckers at your house?
Yes, we do. And I have tried all sorts of different ways to convince them that they should stick to the trees and not my house, but so far none have been very
Mm.
successful.
Do you have a wooden house? Is that why they're pecking on your house?
Yeah, it's a wood frame house. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got the good wood. They want the good wood.
Yes, that's right. It's very tasteful wood, apparently, at least to woodpeckers.
So, Jeff, I want to get into pickleball because you're the one that got me talking about pickleball when you came on season 3, and I was like, "What the heck is pickleball?" I know what it is now, guys, but when Jeff first came to me about pickleball, I was like, "What the heck is that?" So let's talk about pickleball for the listeners out there who might not know what pickleball is.
Okay. So it's a game that's sort of a combination or something in between tennis and table tennis or ping pong. It's on a smaller court than tennis, but it's like a tennis court. There's a lot of the rules of tennis. And but it uses small paddles like ping pong paddles, except they're a little bigger. And it uses a ball that's like a wiffle ball instead of a ping pong or a tennis ball. So, and you whack it back and forth. And it has some weird terminologies, like there's an area up by the net called the kitchen that you're not supposed to step into when you hit the ball, except unless the ball has bounced in the kitchen first, then you can step into it to hit it. And so there's these kind of odd little rules that are different than tennis. But otherwise, it's pretty much like tennis, just with this different paddle and ball and smaller court.
We never talked about the kitchen. This is the first time I'm talking about the kitchen with the pickle.
Well, yeah, that's you got to stay out of the kitchen. That's one of the lessons. And my wife is usually happy that I stay out of our kitchen.
So you're not in the kitchen very often, Jeff?
I am definitely not a cook. I'm happy to eat enjoy my wife's wonderful cooking, and I try to carry that over to my pickleball game.
You know, when I first heard the pickleball, if you guys go back and watch season 3 of me and Jeff's conversation, I was a blonde on steroids, did not understand what pickleball was. I thought it was like a ball that looked like a pickle. I did not understand it at all. I actually reached out to the pickleball club here in Cornwall and found out that I could not join until I was at least 50. So it is for seniors as well, right, Jeff?
Well, it's not, I mean, around here, younger people do play, but it's, like statistically far more older people are into it. And most of the people I play with are former tennis players. I was a very competitive tennis player for a long time, even made it to an age group national championship at one point. And so tennis players, racquetball players, uh, table tennis players tend to gravitate towards it. So it's the people I play with are mostly aged athletes who this is like, okay, this is our last one. After pickleball, it's
We're
tiddlywinks.
done.
Yep.
So, Jeff, I want to talk about the STEM, the educational system. Are you part of the boards of directors for that?
Yeah, I'm actually the president of the board of a foundation called Scientech Foundation of Indiana. And it's a wonderful organization. It's affiliated with a club called the Scientech Club, which I was the president of the club when we had our centennial um, anniversary in 2017. So it's now 107 years old. And it meets every Monday, and we have an educational program. It's made up mostly of retired people, mostly retired professionals like doctors, lawyers, engineers, but all sorts of people from all sorts of other careers. And we have an educational program every week. And then the club created the foundation, and the foundation gives away about $200,000 every year to educational programs around Indiana. And there, for a long, long time, it had to be a program that supported STEM, science, technology, engineering, or medicine, but we've added the A, so STEAM, to include art in it, so long as the art has a technological aspect to it. So, for example, we bought laser printers and 3D printers for the Indianapolis Art Center here in Indy. But most of our money is given in grants to summer camps for kids that are summer science camps, engineering camps, medical camps. That's sort of our main focus, is to support summer camps. But we've bought a lot of equipment for classrooms, funded internships, things like that.
So, how do you feel about the scientific education system in today's world?
Well, I think it can be too narrow. And I had a wonderful liberal arts education where I I took all the sciences. I had, bioscience, geophysics, hardcore physics, and, really felt like that added to my education. But I was a humanities major. I had a triple major in philosophy, religion, and politics. Um, but having that well-rounded experience, well-rounded academic experience was really important to me. And I think it makes you a better citizen and makes you a more well-rounded person. So any, any sort of narrow academic discipline has the danger of being too narrow. But so long as, people in the sciences, just like people in the humanities, have had that wider experience, then hooray, I'm all for it.
Jeff, let's talk about that humanity, because you do a lot of humanitarian missions and that, as well as, and on a lot of board of directors for a lot of humanity aids and that as well, correct?
Well, yeah. I'm only on 3 boards now, which is the fewest I've ever been on. For a long time, I was on usually from 7 to 10 different boards, but I've been kind of letting go of some of them and trying to be, more focused, and also have time for pickleball.
Right, because you got to get that last game in there.
That's right.
Like, I want to talk about making a difference. When you hear that phrase, Jeff, what do you think of?
Well, I think it, it's going back to giving back. Uh, yeah, I think it's very easy to just take from life, take from your parents, take from your school, take from your community, take from your country. There's so much that's just given freely to us, particularly if you're from middle or upper class family. I mean, if you're poor and struggling from the very beginning, that's, it's a little bit more difficult, but still, even then, no matter what your circumstances are, at some point you should be able, assuming that you're not completely incapacitated, you should be able to give back. And uh, there's a lot of research that's shown that giving back, acting charitably or philanthropically, is very good for your mental health. Um, and that's, I think that's just part of being a well-rounded person. And I think the more you have, the more you ought to give back, because that means the more you have, the more that's been given to you. So, yeah, that's the way I see it.
I like how our conversations always go, because I always go into my next question or my next comment. I want to talk about mental illness and wellness, since you brought that up. For men, speaking on a man's behalf, do you feel that there's enough services out there for mental health for men?
Um, I think there is, if you can afford it.
Oh,
Um, like in my neighborhood, which is called Broad Ripple in Indianapolis, we we have a whole lot of counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists. They're just, have offices within this neighborhood of less than 100,000 people. Um, and throughout my city, Indianapolis, there's just like there are grocery deserts, there are uh, medical and mental health deserts where it's not as accessible. But if if you have the means to pay for it, or you have good insurance to pay for it, at least in the communities that I'm familiar with and that I've lived in, it's there. But the for somebody who doesn't have insurance coverage, and who can't afford it, or who's not in the US, not on Medicaid, Medicare, if you've fallen between those cracks, then how are you going to get it?
I
If
think that's
you're in
something that has never been really been brought up, Jeff. Like when you said that, that was the first time I never even thought of funding. Like if you have the funds to get the help, uh, you know, some of us live in countries where it's covered by an OHIP or we're put on waiting lists and stuff like that. But I never ever thought of if you can afford to get the help. That puts another burner onto mental health and reaching out to get services as well.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between one of the differences between US and Canada, US and UK, US and basically all of Western Europe, and much of the other, even much less developed countries that have what people here, sort of derogatorily call socialized medicine. Here we have really high quality medical care, including mental health care, if you have the right insurance or if you can afford it. Um, but in the U.S. right now, another problem is I've seen statistics that indicate 50% of young people are suffering from depression, and many of those young people are not getting any care for that depression, either because it's not recognized, or if it is recognized, it's stigmatized, um, or they don't have access to it because they can't afford it. Their school doesn't have counselors, or it has counselors, but they're overburdened. Um, and so, it's one thing when you've got, a person here and there who's got mental health issues that need tending to, and and they're not getting the care they need. Well, that's a bad thing. But when you've got, literally millions of teenagers that have mental health issues and they're not getting the care they need, that's a really troubling situation. And the US isn't the only country that has that problem,
Yeah,
because even if you have nationalized healthcare, including mental health care, you still have the problem of stigmatization, recognition, those kind of things. So,
yeah,
and especially in the US, we have these school shootings. It seems like about every month, if not more often than not. And we all know that the shooters are very troubled. I mean, they're almost always other troubled young people, usually young people that either are going to or went to that school. Um, it's just you want to think, and I mean, I guess I don't really know if it's true, but I'm pretty positive that if that young person had had proper mental health care when needed, it's unlikely that would have happened.
yeah. I feel mental health is a lot of diagnoses are being given out, but a lot of people don't understand the diagnosis. You're being told, okay, you have depression, take this pill and do this and do that, change this, but they're not actually getting that conversation going where they talk about what causes depression. Is it genetic? Is it your lifestyle? Is it your eating habits? We're getting a lot of labels and a lot of names, but we're not getting understanding, I find, with mental health.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And also, sometimes even the mental health care professionals can be very narrow in their approach. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you fit this category, you get this pill, or you fit that category, you get this talk therapy, as opposed to a really holistic approach, which would cover all those things you just mentioned: diet, environment, genetics, uh, possible drug therapy, and just the whole environment, the whole person. I think really good mental health care is going to do that, take that kind of approach.
Yeah. I find mental health has increased immensely since people started talking about it. Uh, when we had stuff in the shadows, I found that there was less of it. Now that it's out there and people are just saying, I have mental health, I live with mental illness. But then when you try to ask them if they understand why they're living with it or why they were diagnosed with that, they have no clue why they were diagnosed. Like myself, I was diagnosed with conversion disorder, and I was like, what is that? Like, I've never heard of it. So I had to do the research myself. And I'm just like, okay, well, I have some of these symptoms. I have some of this, uh, you know, but if you don't do the research and you don't ask the questions, you're labeled, right? You're just labeled with, okay, I have depression, I have BPD, I have multiple personalities, I have conversions, but we're not understanding these illnesses, right? So how can we better ourselves? And I think it all goes right back to education. Go back and educate ourselves, do the research, and it's almost like going back to your book, hitchhike to find the answers, right? Have that conversation, because when you got in the car, you had a conversation with a person, and I think conversation brings back everything. It goes right back to having that conversation and asking those questions and saying, why are we going through this? Why do we have so much increase in this? Why do we have so much decrease in this? Because we're not having conversations.
Yeah, and in the U.S., the way our healthcare system works is healthcare professionals are under so much pressure to see more and more patients, get them in, move them, the kind of a factory assembly line approach to it, because that's what the insurance companies want. And as a lawyer, I represented a number of doctors and medical offices, and it just saw the change as insurance companies more and more took over managing healthcare, and so many doctors, um, older doctors who could get out, got out because they hated it, and it's the financial side of it should has to be there. I mean, it's got to be paid for. So that should always be in the background.
Yeah.
The first thing should be, what does this patient, this client need? Let's have a conversation, and let's not feel like we have to rush it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
now doctor's appointments are like 15 minutes. And if you don't get everything in 15 minutes, you got to make another appointment. And those appointments are usually 3-4 months down the road. Well, by that time, you've already healed yourself, or you've already taken a cold medicine to get over the cold or the virus. Like, you know what I mean? We've rushing. I find today's world is just a big old rush, right? We're not taking the time to listen. We're not taking that time to pause and say, oh, maybe we have something here. I've been watching this series. I forget what the series is, but it's about vampires and zombies and all of that. And they're testing the blood all the time. And I feel like science has really just rushed too, because they're being told, no, we just need an answer. Just give us an answer. It doesn't matter if it's ready. Just give it to us. Okay. So we're getting partial answers instead of full answers on the understanding of why things are happening the way they are today.
well, I know when I was practicing law, uh, if I didn't take the time to pay attention and really listen to my client, to fully, as much as I was capable of, to fully grasp their situation, to grasp what the problem was, which wasn't always, necessarily right there obvious on the surface, uh, I could miss something and could completely screw up a case. And it's the same in medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same in a lot of different types of work, that you have to be open and to take that holistic approach. And when you have the financial pressures that don't allow you to do, that just don't allow you the time, that 15 minutes, in some cases, maybe that's enough, but in a lot of cases, it's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
and it's bad. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for the practitioner. I mean, like I said, I represented doctors that just, hated working under that system. And, I always thought I sort of wished I would have gone into medicine instead of law because uh, a doctor can do so many wonderful things. I mean, like I've helped put on medical clinics uh, over in Nepal, not practicing the medicine, but just organizing it.
Yeah.
Um, and these doctors come over and do these medical missions and help people who don't have any medical care whatsoever. And oh my God, what a wonderful thing to be able to do. Because what do you do with a law degree? You go there and walk around with a piece of paper and say, well, if you need another piece of paper, I'll get you one. But no, and so it's a shame when you can see doctors practicing in an environment where they don't have that financial pressure because it's volunteer.
Yeah.
They're doing it on their own time and on their own dime. And and I've just seen how delighted doctors are that get to do that. Like just today, I was at my Scientech club and had this wonderful chat with an 80-year-old retired urologist who participates in this organization called PAX, PAX. It's physicians something or other. I can't even remember now, but he's traveled all over Africa putting on free medical clinics and educating um, young African doctors and bringing them back to the States and so forth. And just, what a great thing. What a gift to be able to do that. And so to, to have that gift and then to have it just so stunted because of the financial pressure of an insurance company is just, it's terrible. It's a shame.
Yeah. So, Jeff, I want to go back to your book, the Hitchhiker's Big Adventure. So, if you could say anything to any of the hitchhikers that are still hitchhiking in today's world, what would you say to them?
Well, now if I'm speaking the voice of my mom, it would be careful. uh, but try going back to that 18-year-old adventurer, um, I would say just, be open to the experience, but also be careful. Uh, you know, listen to your mom, be careful, but don't let your mom be like the insurance company that stunts you into being too narrow.
I love that. Listen to your mom, guys, from our listeners out there, right? So, Jeff, if you had any final words to give to anybody out there, what would your final message be to everybody?
Well, I just what we've been saying, live life like it's an adventure, but make your life into a beautiful work of art and be responsible. Use your gifts to give back to the world that's given so much to you.
So, Jeff, how could we bring value back into life?
Um, I think by doing exactly the things that we've been talking about, live life like it's an adventure, create a beautiful life, and be responsible in terms of how you intentionally find ways to give back and to add value to your community because it will add value to your own life.
So, Jeff, do you have any plans of writing a new book?
My wife and I, for the first time ever, we're both writers, we've both written about the same number of books, are collaborating on a long-term project. Since COVID started, we began a custom of almost every weekend picking out a small town or an interesting site within our state of Indiana and going and visiting and taking a bunch of pictures, researching it, posting about it on Facebook, but then eventually turning this into a book about all the small towns in Indiana and what life is like in these towns, the history, and also how they can survive and improve, because so many of them, in this Rust Belt, uh, after the collapse of the auto and steel industry, which has come back to some extent. So many of the towns in the Midwest and also in, lower Canada, I know too, have suffered terribly. And some have really struggled back very successfully, excuse me, and others are still really struggling. And sorry, and losing population. And we've come up with a few ideas on what they should do, or can at least try.
Yeah, I've been following
So
some
we
of
want
your
to put that.
journeys and some of your pictures. Like you give a lot of information as well when you're taking pictures of buildings and stuff like that. And I found it really interesting. You were in one part, and I believe it was a sawmill or it was a factory of some sort, and all the windows were busted open on it. You had given lots of information on that one. I found that really interesting, and that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So we try to, portray both towns that are struggling and and failing, and towns that have really succeeded and come back, and what's the difference, and the ones that are struggling, what could they do to make their town a more attractive place to live, to bring back people and to bring new people in.
Yeah. What I really found interesting about it is the history that you're giving as well. When the building was built, what was running in that building, a lot of cool facts. So if anybody wanted to follow your adventures with these pictures and updates, where can they follow you for that, Jeff?
Well, I'm doing that on Facebook. So just my name, Jeff Rasley, on Facebook. You'll see the posts that I've done, and you'll see a new one just about every week. Sometimes more than, like this last weekend, we visited two sort of sacred places in Indiana, St. Meinrad Monastery and St. Mary's Immaculate Conception Monastery. And so I focused on those two monasteries and also the little town nearby. So I've split it into two different posts.
So, Jeff, if anybody wanted to follow you, where could they follow you?
I have a website, which is www, and then my full name, jeffreyrasley.com. So that's there, and then that'll have links to my books and the two different foundations, and also for anybody that's interested in trekking or climbing in the Himalayas, I'm still involved with an outfitter company over there. I'm their U.S. representative. So yeah, there's all that's on my website.
Well, it's been a real pleasure having you back. It's 3 times, it's 3 years, and we always have some good conversations and some good talks together. Uh, if anybody would like to see Jeff's 3 Times, you can check out Miss Liz's YouTube channel. Go over there, subscribe, ring that little doorbell, and you can see those. Jeff was on season 3, season 4, and now he's on season 5. So you can check Jeff's 3 Times out. Maybe make it a what do you call that? Watching a sequel, like a series, Jeff's series. We'll have Jeff's series, and there's other multiple guests that have been on Tea Time that have been on many times. So you could check out their Tea Times as well. If you'd like to know more about Miss Liz, check out Miss Liz's website at www.misslizsteatimes.com. I will be back on Thursday. Joel McKay, who was supposed to be on the 3rd, he is feeling better, so he'll be back on Thursday, and he'll be sharing his books, and it's called It Came from the Trees. It's a horror fiction, so we're going to talk about that book. And then we're also going to talk with Gary W. Waitfried. I hope I'm saying it right. And we're going to talk about his book as well, with a little bit of humor and one humor, one language in a small classroom. So we'll be talking about that book as well. So you can check that out. Until then, just keep spilling your teas, keep being true to yourselves, and make a difference by sharing real kindness and real strong tea. together one cup of tea at a time, and we'll make a difference. And until then, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for all listening. And I will be back on Thursday, same time, same place, and we'll spill 2 new teas with you guys all then. Until then, take care.